I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Charlie Lang, who has been leading on the SEND review, and he's going to take you through it. Charlie. Clicker.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Christine, for that warm welcome. And it's great to be with you all today. Good to see you in person. As Christine says, my name's Charlie Lang. I'm one of 4 deputy directors in the department's SEND and AP directorate, part of the department's families group. And this morning, I'm going to take you through how the government is proposing to improve the SEND and AP system for children and young people with SEND in England, and indeed their families. I'm going to be unpacking the issues the SEND review was asked to consider. I'm going to be explaining what we found during the course of the review, and I'm going to be explaining the proposals that the government is currently consulting on and for which we're all gathered here today to discuss. So just a little bit of background to the review first of all. We undertook the review itself as government because we recognise the level of frustration with the current SEND system, and indeed how often, and too often, children and young people with SEND are not getting the support they need when they need it. And we listened hard to the voices and experiences of children and young people, their families, professionals and leaders across education, health and care, indeed many of you here today. And as we did, we saw how the alternative provision system, AP, is increasingly seen locally as part of local inclusion systems, with around 80% of children and young people in AP identified as having special needs. So we therefore took the decision to look at AP as part of the SEND review. And we looked at 4 key challenges facing the SEND system. We started with 3, and the first we looked at was, why is it that children and young people with SEND and AP continue to have poorer outcomes than their peers? From lower attendance and attainment, to higher rates of bullying and poor mental health, to being more likely to be unemployed, and even more likely to be, and surprisingly likely to be criminally exploited. Second, we looked at why are parents and carers increasingly dissatisfied with the present system, with too many describing their frustration of an increasingly adversarial system, despite the 2014 reforms. And third, we looked at why is the SEND system not delivering better value for money, given the high needs budget has risen by over 40% since 2019, rising to 9.1 billion this financial year. And as we looked at those 3 key challenges, we also noticed huge inconsistencies in the support systems and processes experienced by children and young people and their families. And we saw that too often provision is a product of where a child lives or the setting they attend rather than their needs. And what the review found as we dug under those challenges was a vicious cycle that's driving these challenges in the system. We found that this cycle begins in the early years and mainstream settings, and that despite the best endeavours of the workforce, children and young people's needs are too often identified too late. Those needs escalate and become increasingly entrenched. Parents, carers and providers alike told us repeatedly they do not know what is reasonable to expect from their local setting, and too many lose confidence that mainstream settings will be able to meet the needs of their children and young people effectively. And as a result, more parents, carers and providers understandably feel they have no choice but to seek an EHCP, and in some cases, specialist provision, as a means of legally guaranteeing the appropriate support. And we see, therefore, increased numbers of requests for EHCPs and increased requests for specialist provision. And that, in turn, means more children and young people face significant delays in accessing support as families navigate long bureaucratic processes. And even then, children don't end up with the right support, with some children and young people being placed in specialist settings, often very far from their local community, often in independent provision, when their needs could be better met effectively in local mainstream settings with the right high-quality targeted support. In some cases, children and young people are placed in alternative provision due to lengthy delays in the HCP assessment process, seriously disrupting those young people's already disrupted education journey. As more children and young people receive HCPs and attend specialist settings, more resource and workforce capacity is then pulled to the specialist end of the system, meaning that there is less available to deliver early intervention and effective, timely support in mainstream settings. And as a result, this vicious cycle continues, with outcomes and experiences for children and young people continue to suffer and cost pressures increasing. So the vision the government set out in the Green Paper in response to that is a vision for an inclusive SEND and AP system that delivers great outcomes for children and young people, with the vast majority of children and young people able to access the support they need to thrive without the need for an EHCP or specialist alternative provision place. The vision includes children's needs being identified promptly and appropriate support put in place at the earliest opportunity before needs escalate. Of course, alongside that, we are clear of the need for a strong specialist sector that has a clear purpose to support those children and young people with more complex needs who do require specialist support or alternative provision. And for those children and young people who require an EHCP or specialist placements, they should be able to access that specialist provision with minimal bureaucracy or delays. It's worth saying, as we set out that vision, that the Green Paper is just one of 4 major reforms to the education, care and health systems happening at the same time. The Green Paper was published alongside the Schools White Paper, the forthcoming Independent Care Review, and the current reforms already underway in the health system. And taken together, these represent genuinely a once-in-a-generation opportunity to put children and young people with SEND at the heart of all we do across the education, health and care systems, and to make sure those systems work together. In particular, I'd highlight the Schools White Paper, which was developed in parallel with the SEND Green Paper and published indeed the same week as the SEND Green Paper. The government's headline target in that Schools White Paper, that 90% of all children and young people should be able to reach the expected standard at Key Stage 2 in reading, writing and maths by 2030, is hugely significant, because we simply can't achieve that kind of government goal without delivering a more inclusive education system for children and young people with SEND. It's just not possible to deliver that target without delivering for children and young people with SEND. So we see that as a really significant commitment. So that's the vision and the background. Let's talk a little bit more about the actual proposals themselves. There are 5 key elements to how we propose to realise the vision set out in the Green Paper. First, the Green Paper begins with proposing clear and common standards across the SEND and alternative provision system, so that needs are identified, assessed and supported fairly and consistently, no matter where a child or young person lives or is educated. Second, we set out how we plan to build capacity so more children and young people are able to have their needs met in high-quality mainstream provision with high aspirations, a confident and expert workforce, and quality targeted support where needed. Third, we talk about a strong specialist sector that supports those children and young people with more complex needs, and a clear vision for an improved alternative provision system that offers upstream support in mainstream as well as placements within AP themselves. Fourth, we talk about funding reform and strengthened accountability across the system so that everyone knows their role they play and is incentivised and held account for doing so. And finally, we need a strong focus on delivery, supporting the move to a more inclusive system that starts to deliver now and in the long term for children and young people and their families. So there's an overview, just digging down to each in turn. To give parents and carers greater confidence that their local early years setting, school, college, will be able to effectively support their child's needs, we are proposing to establish a national SEND and alternative provision system. Within that, we're proposing to create new national SEND standards spanning early years settings through to further education and higher education to bring greater consistency to the provision, processes and systems that should be made available across the country for every child and young person with SEND. The standards would act as a common point of reference for every partner within the SEND and alternative provision system across education, health and care. We're proposing to establish new local SEND partnerships, bringing together education, including AP, health and care partners with local government and other partners critical for success, to produce a local inclusion plan setting out how each local area will meet those national standards, with co-production with children, young people and families remaining a fundamental principle throughout. And during our consultation, we want to hear from you in particular the sort of factors we should be really considering at the forefront of our minds when developing those national standards to ensure they generally do act as a reference point for improving outcomes and experiences. And we want to hear from you about how should we develop the proposals for the new local SEND partnerships to ensure they really do drive the effective development of those new local inclusion plans. We're also proposing the new national standards covers the processes in the system, particularly those designed to support children and young people with more specialist needs. First, by introducing a standardised and digitised EHC process. Second, by supporting parents and carers to express an informed preference for a suitable placement from a tailored list of settings appropriate to the child or young person's needs. And third, by streamlining the redress process, making it easier to resolve disputes earlier, to get provision to children provided earlier, including proposals for mandatory mediation. And through the consultation, we're seeking your views about what components of the HCP we should consider reviewing or amending as we move to standardisation and digitisation. We're asking questions about how do we create a system where parents and local authorities work together really effectively to produce that tailored list of placements appropriate for the child, so we give parents real confidence in the HCP process. And we're asking for views on the extent to which people agree with the plans to strengthen redress, including on mandatory mediation. So the Green Paper then sets out ambitious proposals for a continuum of support to enable needs to be identified early and accurately so the right support is delivered in the right setting at the right time. And the Green Paper includes our plans to consult on the introduction of a new SENCO, National Professional Qualification for schools, and increase the numbers of staff with an accredited Level 3 SENCO qualification in early years. We include our plans to commission analysis, working with DHSC to better understand the support that children and young people with SEND need from the health workforce, so that there's a clear focus on SEND in health workforce planning in future. And we set out our plans to improve mainstream provision, setting out more detail in the Schools White Paper, particularly around excellent teaching. But in the Green Paper, we also talk about our development of a What Works evidence programme to identify and share best practice, including on early intervention. As part of this provision, we are investing funding now. We're putting in more than 10,000 additional respite placements through an investment of 30 million, alongside 82 million to create a network of family hubs so children and young people and their families can access wraparound support. Crucially, we're investing £2.6 billion worth of capital funding over the next 3 years to deliver new school places to improve existing provision for children and young people with SEND or those who require alternative provision. Investing 18 million to build the capacity in the supported internships programme. And we're going to be improving transition at further education by introducing the common transfer files, alongside piloting the rollout of adjustment passports to ensure young people with SEND are prepared for higher education and employment. And in this area, this continuum of support area, we have a range of consultation questions, including on strengthening early years practice, the proposals to introduce a new mandatory SENCO NPQ, and seeking views on what more can be done to help young people with SEND access apprenticeships successfully. Turning to alternative provision. At their best, alternative provision schools are experts in dealing with behavioural or other needs which present a barrier to learning, including support for health needs in medical and hospital schools. but a high-quality alternative provision offer does not exist everywhere. So the Green Paper sets out a national vision for alternative provision, enabling local areas to ensure that young people with challenging behaviour or with health needs to get the targeted support in mainstream settings or access to time-limited or transitional places in alternative provision schools. And in this chapter on AP, we're proposing to require that the new local SEND partnerships plan and deliver an alternative provision service and give alternative provision schools funding stability so they can focus on early intervention. We're proposing to build system capacity through our plans for alternative provision schools to be in a strong multi-academy trust or have plans to join or form one, and to open new alternative provision free schools where they are most needed. We propose developing a bespoke performance framework for alternative provision to set robust standards that focus on progress, reintegration into mainstream education, or sustainable post-16 destinations. We propose to deliver greater oversight and transparency of the pupil movements between mainstream and alternative provision. And we'll be launching a call for evidence before the summer on the use of unregistered provision in the AP system. And so we're consulting here, for example, on whether you agree with the new direction for AP, with specific questions on how AP should be funded and monitored, and on the proposals for a statutory framework for pupil placements into AP. Now, the Green Paper sets out our proposals to align incentives and accountabilities to drive the cultural change and ensure effective local delivery against the national standards. And here we're proposing to deliver clarity in roles and responsibilities with every partner across education, health, care and local government. We're going to be equipping the department's new regions group formed this summer to take responsibility for holding local authorities and MATs to account for delivery for children and young people with SEND through new funding agreements between local government and DfE. We're proposing to provide statutory guidance to integrated children's boards to set out clearly how statutory responsibilities for SEND in health should be discharged. We're also consulting on introducing new inclusion dashboards for 0 to 25 provision, offering timely, transparent pictures of how the system is performing at local and national levels across education, health and care for children and young people with SEND. We're consulting on introducing a new national framework of banding and price tariffs for funding, matched to the levels of need and types of education provision set out in the national standards to help drive value for money. And we're working with Ofsted and CQC on their plan to deliver an updated local area SEND inspection framework with a focus on arrangements and experiences of children and young people with SEND and alternative provision. And here in particular, we're consulting on the key metrics that we should capture and use to measure local and national performance in those dashboards. And how can we best develop a national framework for funding bands and tariffs so they really do help us achieve our objectives. So, following our consultation that takes us into July, we will be working with partners to design and deliver a SEND and alternative provision delivery plan, and we've committed to publishing that later this year. We're also consulting in the Green Paper on establishing a new national SEND delivery board to bring together the relevant government departments with national delivery partners, including parents, carers and representatives of local government, education, health and care, to hold partners to account for the timely implementation of proposals. And we're taking immediate steps to stabilise local SEND systems now. So alongside the investments I mentioned earlier, in particular the £2.6 billion on capital, we're also investing an additional £300 million through the Safety Valve programme and £85 million in the Delivering Better Value programme over the next 3 years so that local authorities are better able to support children and young people with SEND and prepare for the changes ahead. So, thank you so much for listening and for reading the Green Paper and considering the government's proposals. Creating a single national system that delivers consistently high aspirations and ambitions for children and young people with SEND and those in alternative provision is far from a straightforward task. But the reward for getting this right is huge. As I said earlier, I think this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity given the wider reforms going across health, schools and care too. And we're committed to continue to listen to children, young people, parents, carers, and all of you who advocate and work with them to achieve that ambition. Together, as Christine started this session with, we can deliver more effectively for every child and young person with SEND and all those in alternative provision, and help them thrive and be well prepared for adult life. And we are looking forward to our discussions today and our panel discussion. Thank you.